Hi, I'm Saurabh Singh Chauhan, Martin Luther King Jr. In this audiobook, I takes you on an enlightening journey through the life of Martin Luther King Jr., a beacon of hope and justice. Dive into this masterful narration and uncover how Martin Luther King Jr. his unwavering determination carved a path for equality and freedom. This isn't just a story, it's a lesson in resilience and the power of a dream. Let's start.
Know about Martin Luther King Jr., a significant role in American history and the civil rights movement by Saurabh Singh Chauhan. Disclaimers and copyrights. While every precaution has been taken in the preparation of this book, the publisher and author assumes no responsibility for errors or omissions, or for damages resulting from the use of the information contained herein. Copyright 2023 Saurabh Singh Chauhan. All rights reserved. No part of this document may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means, electronic, mechanical, photocopying, recording, or otherwise, without prior permission. Table of Contents. Chapter 1, Introductions. Chapter 2, Early Life and Education. Chapter 3, Segregation and Jim Crow Laws. Chapter 4, Education and Spiritual Influences. Chapter 5, Nonviolent Philosophy and Gandhian Principles. Chapter 6, Rise of Civil Rights Activism. Chapter 7, Montgomery Bus Boycott. Chapter 8, SCLC and Organized Protests. Chapter 9, Letter from Birmingham Jail. Chapter 10, March on Washington and I Have a Dream. Chapter 11, Nobel Peace Prize and National Recognition. Chapter 12, Voting Rights Struggles. Chapter 13, Chicago Campaign and Urban Inequalities. Chapter 14, Opposition and Controversies. Chapter 15, Selma to Montgomery March. Chapter 16, Civil Rights Act of 1968. Chapter 17, Economic Justice and Poor People's Campaign. Chapter 18, Legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. Chapter 19, Impact on Modern Social Movements. Chapter 20, Most Important Events of His Life in Chronological Approach. Chapter 21, His Quotations. Chapter 22, Summary of all chapters. Chapter 23, Illustration or Images. Chapter 1, Introduction. Know about Martin Luther King Jr., a significant role in American history and the civil rights movement by Saurabh Singh Chauhan. Welcome to the captivating journey through the life and legacy of one of America's most iconic figures, Martin Luther King Jr. In the following pages, we will embark on an exploration of his remarkable contributions to American history and the civil rights movement. Born on January 15, 1929 in Atlanta, Georgia, Martin Luther King Jr. emerged as a beacon of hope during a tumultuous era. His unwavering dedication to justice, equality, and nonviolent protest left an indelible mark on society, transforming the course of history and inspiring generations to come. This biography aims to illuminate the various facets of Martin Luther King Jr.'s life, from his early years in the segregated South to his pivotal role in breaking down racial barriers and advocating for civil rights. Through his eloquent speeches, passionate activism, and strategic leadership, King became a driving force in the fight against racial discrimination and social injustice. As we delve into the chapters that follow, we will journey through his formative experiences, the influences that shaped his worldview, the challenges he confronted, and the triumphs he achieved. We will witness the rise of his nonviolent philosophy, inspired by the teachings of Mahatma Gandhi, and its profound impact on the civil rights movement's strategies. From the Montgomery Bus Boycott, a catalyst for change, to the historic March on Washington where he delivered his iconic "I Have a Dream" speech, we will witness the pivotal moments that defined his legacy. His courageous stand against segregation, his eloquent letters from Birmingham jail, and his tireless efforts to secure voting rights for all citizens will all come into focus. Throughout this journey, we will also explore the controversies and opposition he faced, underscoring the magnitude of his mission. His unwavering commitment to justice extended beyond racial equality to economic justice, as evidenced by his efforts to address urban inequalities and poverty. As we conclude this biography, we will examine the enduring impact of Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy on modern social movements and his inspirational quotations that continue to resonate with people from all walks of life. This book is not just a recounting of historical events. It is an opportunity to delve into the depths of a visionary leader's soul, to understand the driving forces behind his actions, and to reflect on the relevance of his principles in today's world. Join me on this enlightening journey as we uncover the life, struggles, and triumphs of Martin Luther King Jr., a man who dared to dream of a more just and equitable society for all. Chapter 2. Early Life and Education. In the heart of the American South, amidst a landscape colored by both beauty and inequality, young Martin Luther King Jr. began his journey. Born on January 15, 1929 in Atlanta, Georgia, he was the son of Martin Luther King Sr. and Alberta Williams King. Little did the world know that this child would grow up to become a beacon of hope and an advocate for change. Martin's upbringing was steeped in the traditions of the Black church. His father, a reverend, instilled in him a strong sense of faith, community, and moral responsibility. These early experiences laid the foundation for King's future leadership in the civil rights movement. As a young boy, Martin faced the harsh realities of segregation and racial discrimination. He attended segregated schools and witnessed firsthand the injustices that permeated society. These early experiences left an indelible mark on his consciousness, fostering a deep desire for justice and equality. Martin's exceptional intellect was evident from a young age. He excelled in school, skipping grades and eventually enrolling in Morehouse College in Atlanta at the tender age of 15. It was during his time at Morehouse that King's passion for social justice began to take root. He was exposed to the teachings of Mahatma Gandhi and the principles of nonviolent resistance, which would later become central to his philosophy. After completing his studies at Morehouse, Martin continued his education, earning a divinity degree from Crozer Theological Seminary in Pennsylvania. These years of academic pursuit not only sharpened his intellectual faculties, but also deepened his commitment to addressing the societal injustices that he had witnessed throughout his life. Martin's journey would ultimately lead him to Boston University, where he pursued a doctorate in systematic theology. His studies were characterized by a synthesis of theology, philosophy, and ethics, providing him with a solid intellectual foundation for the challenges that lay ahead. As we delve into the chapters that follow, we will trace Martin Luther King Jr.'s evolution from a young boy shaped by his surroundings to a learned scholar armed with a profound understanding of justice and equality. We will witness how his early experiences and education would set the stage for his emergence as a transformative leader in the struggle for civil rights. Chapter 3. Segregation and Jim Crow Laws. In the early 20th century, as Martin Luther King Jr. came of age, the South was ensnared in the grip of a deeply entrenched system of racial segregation known as Jim Crow. This chapter transports us back to an era where racial prejudice and discrimination were not only accepted, but codified into law. Jim Crow laws, enacted in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, mandated racial segregation in public facilities, schools, transportation, and virtually every aspect of daily life. African Americans were subjected to separate but equal treatment, a facade that thinly veiled the stark inequalities that persisted. Martin Luther King Jr. witnessed the insidious effects of Jim Crow laws firsthand, from segregated water fountains and restrooms to the humiliation of being relegated to the back of buses. These degrading practices not only perpetuated racial hierarchy, but also reinforced the notion of African Americans as second-class citizens. The education system reflected this pervasive inequality, with separate schools for black and white students that were anything but equal. Inadequate resources, substandard facilities, and overcrowded classrooms were the norm for African American children. Despite these obstacles, King's thirst for knowledge and his parents' encouragement propelled him to excel academically. As Martin matured, his growing awareness of the injustices of segregation fueled his commitment to change. He realized that segregation not only stifled individual potential, but also perpetuated a cycle of poverty and disenfranchisement. This realization sowed the seeds of his future activism and his determination to challenge the status quo. The systemic racism embodied by Jim Crow laws became a catalyst for King's involvement in the civil rights movement. Inspired by his Christian faith and the principles of nonviolent resistance, he would go on to dedicate his life to dismantling the barriers of segregation and securing equality for all. In the following chapters, as we delve deeper into Martin Luther King Jr.'s transformative journey, tracing his evolution from a young man affected by segregation to a leader who would challenge the very foundations of racial inequality. Through his unwavering determination and unyielding spirit, King would shine a light on the darkness of discrimination, inspiring a movement that would shape the course of American history. Chapter 4: Education and Spiritual Influences. Amidst the challenges of segregation, a young Martin Luther King Jr. found solace and inspiration in the realms of education and spirituality. This chapter unveils the pivotal role that learning and faith played in shaping his character and guiding his path toward becoming a transformative leader. Education for King was both a means of empowerment and a weapon against injustice. His thirst for knowledge was insatiable, and he recognized that education held the key to dismantling the oppressive forces of segregation. At Morehouse College, he was immersed in a nurturing academic environment that fostered critical thinking and a commitment to social change. It was during his time at Morehouse that King's spiritual foundation also deepened. Raised in a family deeply rooted in the Baptist tradition, he drew strength from his faith. His father, a prominent Baptist preacher, instilled in him a sense of moral duty and a belief in the power of collective action. These spiritual influences would become the bedrock of King's philosophy of nonviolent resistance. As he pursued further studies, King's exposure to a diverse range of theological perspectives enriched his understanding of Christianity's message of love, justice, and equality. His studies at Crozer Theological Seminary and Boston University allowed him to meld theology with ethics, providing him with a comprehensive framework to address the societal injustices he witnessed. The influence of Mahatma Gandhi, a proponent of nonviolent resistance, further shaped King's philosophy. He marveled at Gandhi's ability to wield the power of truth and love against oppressive regimes, realizing the potential for similar tactics in the fight for civil rights. In the chapters that follow, we will delve deeper into how Martin Luther King Jr.'s education and spiritual journey converged to form a unique perspective on activism and social change. We will witness how his unwavering commitment to justice and equality was anchored in a deep well of faith and intellectual rigor. As we unravel the intricate tapestry of Martin Luther King Jr.'s formative years, tracing the influences that would propel him toward a path of leadership and ignite a flame of hope in the hearts of millions. Through education and spiritual enlightenment, King would not only transform his own life, but also lay the foundation for a movement that would challenge the very fabric of an unjust society. Chapter 5: Nonviolent Philosophy and Gandhian Principles. In a world rife with tension and injustice, Martin Luther King Jr. embarked on a profound exploration of nonviolent philosophy and the teachings of Mahatma Gandhi. This chapter delves into the origins of King's commitment to nonviolence and how he harnessed its power to lead a movement for change. The seeds of King's nonviolent philosophy were sown during his studies, particularly his exposure to the writings of Henry David Thoreau and the works of Gandhi. These influential figures demonstrated that peaceful resistance could be a formidable force against oppression, a realization that would shape the trajectory of King's activism. Central to King's nonviolent philosophy was the belief that love and compassion had the strength to conquer hatred and injustice. Drawing inspiration from Gandhi's concept of satyagraha, King embraced the idea that the power of truth and moral integrity could compel societal transformation. King's commitment to nonviolence extended beyond theory to practical application. He believed that nonviolent resistance was not passive acquiescence, but an active force that required discipline, courage, and a steadfast refusal to perpetuate violence. Through sit-ins, boycotts, and peaceful protests, King demonstrated the potency of nonviolent action in sparking change. In the chapters that follow, we will witness how Martin Luther King Jr. translated these principles into action, leading movements that challenged segregation and systemic racism. His ability to maintain his composure in the face of adversity and respond to hate with love became a hallmark of his leadership. This exploration of King's transformative journey, as we examine how his commitment to nonviolent philosophy and Gandhian principles laid the groundwork for a movement that would not only alter the course of history, but also inspire a global struggle for justice. Through his unwavering adherence to nonviolence, King would prove that the greatest power is the power to change hearts and minds. Chapter 6. Rise of Civil Rights Activism. In the wake of a nation divided by segregation and inequality, a fervent spirit of activism began to rise. This chapter takes us through the pivotal moments and burgeoning movements that mark the ascent of civil rights activism, with Martin Luther King Jr. at its helm. As the 1950s unfolded, the groundswell of discontent against racial discrimination gained momentum. The stage was set for a new era of civil rights activism, one that would challenge the status quo and demand justice for all. Martin Luther King Jr., with his unwavering determination and commitment to nonviolent resistance, emerged as a central figure in this burgeoning movement. The catalyst for this rise was the landmark Supreme Court decision in Brown v. Board of Education in 1954, which declared segregated schools unconstitutional. This ruling sparked a wave of hope and a renewed sense of possibility among African Americans, setting the scene for a series of pivotal events that would shape the course of history. One of the most notable milestones was the Montgomery Bus Boycott of 1955-1956, a watershed moment in the fight against segregation. The boycott, ignited by Rosa Parks' refusal to give up her bus seat, showcased the power of collective action and economic resistance. Martin Luther King Jr. played a central role in organizing and leading the boycott, his first foray into the national spotlight. The success of the Montgomery Bus Boycott emboldened activists and paved the way for the establishment of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC, an organization dedicated to nonviolent protest and civil rights advocacy. Under King's leadership, the SCLC would become a driving force behind some of the most pivotal events of the civil rights movement. In the chapters ahead, we will delve into the dynamic landscape of civil rights activism during this era. From sit-ins and freedom rides to pivotal court cases, we will witness the relentless struggle to dismantle the walls of segregation and challenge institutional racism. Through it all, Martin Luther King Jr.'s indomitable spirit and unwavering commitment to justice would shine brightly, guiding a movement that would change the course of history. As we journey through this critical phase of the civil rights movement, exploring the triumphs, challenges, and enduring impact of a generation's fight for equality. Through the lens of Martin Luther King Jr.'s leadership, we gain insight into the power of collective action and the potential for transformation when individuals come together in pursuit of a just and equitable society. Chapter 7. Montgomery Bus Boycott. In the heart of Montgomery, Alabama, a spark was ignited that would blaze a trail toward justice and equality. This chapter plunges us into the heart of the Montgomery Bus Boycott, a defining moment in the civil rights movement that propelled Martin Luther King Jr. and his message of nonviolent resistance to the forefront of the nation's consciousness. The stage was set on December 1, 1955, when Rosa Parks, a courageous African-American seamstress, refused to relinquish her bus seat to a white passenger. This act of defiance, rooted in the fatigue of enduring segregation, kindled the flames of resistance. The subsequent arrest of Parks inspired the African-American community to take a resolute stand against the discriminatory practices of the Montgomery bus system. Enter Martin Luther King Jr., a young and charismatic pastor who would become the voice and symbol of the boycott. Elected to lead the Montgomery Improvement Association, MIA, King harnessed the collective strength of the African American community, calling for a citywide bus boycott that would become a pivotal moment in the fight for civil rights. For 381 days, African American citizens of Montgomery steadfastly abstained from using the city's segregated buses. The boycott posed both personal and economic sacrifices, yet it demonstrated the potent force of nonviolent protest. The resolute determination and peaceful resilience of the boycott participants captured national and international attention, turning the spotlight on the glaring injustices of segregation. The Montgomery bus boycott not only disrupted the city's transportation system, but also catalyzed a broader conversation about racial inequality. It was during this time that Martin Luther King Jr. eloquently articulated the principles of nonviolent resistance, emphasizing the transformative power of love and unity in the face of adversity. In the chapters that follow, we will witness the unwavering commitment of those who participated in the boycott and explore how Martin Luther King Jr.'s leadership navigated the challenges and triumphs of this historic campaign. Through their collective efforts, they not only dismantled the segregated bus system, but also set a precedent for the larger struggle for civil rights. As we step into the heart of Montgomery during those transformative days, where the journey toward equality began with a single act of defiance. Through the Montgomery bus boycott, we will witness the birth of a movement that would forever change the trajectory of American history and lay the foundation for a new era of social change. Chapter 8: SCLC and Organized Protests. As the embers of the Montgomery bus boycott continued to burn, a new chapter in the civil rights movement was written. This chapter delves into the formation of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC, and its pivotal role in organizing and coordinating impactful protests that would challenge the entrenched system of segregation. In the aftermath of the Montgomery bus boycott's success, Martin Luther King Jr. recognized the need for a unified and strategic approach to civil rights activism. Thus, in 1957, the SCLC was born, with King serving as its inaugural president. The organization's mission was clear: to harness the power of nonviolent resistance to effect lasting change. The SCLC became a beacon of hope, mobilizing individuals and communities across the South to join the fight against segregation. Through workshops, trainings, and grassroots organizing, the SCLC equipped activists with the tools and strategies necessary to peacefully challenge the status quo. One of the SCLC's hallmark initiatives was the establishment of citizenship schools, which aimed to empower African Americans with literacy and voting education. By arming individuals with knowledge and confidence, the SCLC sought to dismantle the barriers that prevented them from fully participating in democracy. Organized protests became a powerful weapon in the SCLC's arsenal. From sit-ins at segregated lunch counters to marches that demanded an end to voter suppression, the SCLC galvanized individuals to engage in acts of civil disobedience, showcasing the strength of collective action. The Albany movement in Georgia and the Birmingham campaign in Alabama exemplified the SCLC's strategic approach. These protests thrust the injustices of segregation into the national spotlight, forcing America to confront the stark realities faced by African Americans on a daily basis. Despite challenges and setbacks, the SCLC remained committed to its vision of a just and equitable society. In the upcoming chapters, we will explore the SCLC's coordinated efforts to challenge segregation and racial inequality. Through the lens of Martin Luther King Jr. and the SCLC, we will witness the transformation of organized protests into a powerful force for change, reshaping the social and political landscape of the United States. We navigate the turbulent waters of organized civil rights protests, where courage and conviction converge to challenge the forces of segregation. Through the actions of the SCLC and its dedicated activists, we gain insight into the remarkable capacity of individuals to effect monumental change through peaceful and determined resistance. Chapter 9. Letter from Birmingham Jail. In the annals of history, certain moments crystallize the essence of a movement. This chapter delves into one such moment, the writing of Martin Luther King Jr.'s poignant Letter from Birmingham Jail. This eloquent missive serves as a testament to the power of words, moral conviction, and the unyielding commitment to justice. The year was 1963, and the civil rights movement was at a critical juncture. In Birmingham, Alabama, a city marked by entrenched segregation, protests and demonstrations were met with fierce resistance. Martin Luther King Jr., along with other activists, was arrested for leading nonviolent protests that aimed to shatter the chains of racial inequality. While confined to a jail cell, King seized the opportunity to respond to a letter from local clergymen that criticized the timing and methods of the civil rights protests. His letter from Birmingham Jail emerged as a magnum opus of moral reasoning and a resounding defense of nonviolent resistance. In this letter, King eloquently articulated the urgency of the civil rights struggle and the moral imperative to challenge unjust laws. He drew upon a rich tapestry of philosophical, religious, and historical references to underscore the interconnectedness of humanity and the duty to oppose injustice. The letter from Birmingham Jail not only defended the strategies of nonviolent protest, but also called out the perniciousness of moderate white allies who, while sympathizing with the cause, advocated for patience and gradual change. King's words pierced through the rhetoric of complacency, urging a swift and decisive response to the dire circumstances of African Americans. Through this chapter, we will explore the depth and breadth of King's reasoning, as well as the profound impact of the letter from Birmingham Jail on the civil rights movement. We will witness how his eloquence and unyielding commitment to justice transformed a seemingly mundane act of writing into a catalyst for change. We delve into the heart and mind of Martin Luther King Jr. during his time of confinement, where his words not only challenged the status quo, but also ignited a spark that would illuminate the path toward equality. Through the letter from Birmingham Jail, we gain a deeper understanding of King's moral vision and his unwavering determination to champion the cause of civil rights. Chapter 10. March on Washington and I Have a Dream. August 28, 1963, a day etched into the annals of history as a defining moment in the struggle for civil rights. This chapter invites us to witness the culmination of years of activism and determination as Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his iconic "I Have a Dream" speech during the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. The march was a manifestation of unity and purpose, drawing together over 250,000 people from diverse backgrounds who converged on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. Their shared goal was clear: to demand an end to racial segregation and discrimination, and to advocate for economic equality and justice. Amidst the sea of faces, Martin Luther King Jr. stood as the embodiment of hope and resilience. His "I Have a Dream" speech, delivered from the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, resonated with eloquence and conviction, capturing the collective aspirations of a nation yearning for change. In his speech, King painted a vivid picture of a future where racial harmony and equality prevailed. He articulated a dream where individuals would be judged by the content of their character rather than the color of their skin. His words, infused with biblical references and the ideals of democracy, reverberated far beyond the crowd gathered that day. The "I Have a Dream" speech became a galvanizing force, igniting the hearts of those present and inspiring countless others who would hear or read its words. King's vision of a just and inclusive society reverberated across the nation, propelling the civil rights movement to new heights. In the upcoming chapters, we will delve into the impact of the March on Washington and the enduring legacy of the "I Have a Dream" speech. Through the lens of this pivotal moment, we will witness how Martin Luther King Jr.'s words transcended the realm of rhetoric to become a rallying cry for justice and equality. We step onto the hallowed ground of the National Mall, where the echoes of King's voice carried a message of hope and transformation. Through the March on Washington and the immortal "I Have a Dream" speech, we bear witness to the indomitable spirit of a movement that dared to dream of a better world, and in doing so, changed the course of history. Chapter 11. Nobel Peace Prize and National Recognition. In the wake of the "I Have a Dream" speech and the March on Washington, Martin Luther King Jr.'s message of justice, equality, and nonviolent resistance reverberated far and wide. This chapter explores the profound recognition and international acclaim that followed, culminating in King being awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. The year was 1964, and the eyes of the world were fixed on the United States as the civil rights movement gained unprecedented momentum. King's leadership and unwavering commitment to nonviolence positioned him as a symbol of hope, both within the nation and on the global stage. It was against this backdrop that King was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. The prestigious accolade, bestowed upon him for his exceptional efforts to combat racial inequality and promote social justice through nonviolent means, elevated him to the ranks of the world's most revered leaders. The Nobel Peace Prize was not only a recognition of King's individual contributions, but also a validation of the civil rights movement's moral and strategic principles. It underscored the power of nonviolent resistance as a force for change, transcending geographic and cultural boundaries. As King accepted the Nobel Peace Prize, he humbly acknowledged the collective effort of countless individuals who had contributed to the cause. He dedicated the prize to those who had struggled, sacrificed, and marched alongside him, emphasizing that the fight for justice was a shared endeavor. In the chapters that follow, we will delve into the significance of the Nobel Peace Prize in the context of the civil rights movement, and explore its lasting impact on King's trajectory and the movement itself. We will witness how this accolade not only solidified King's role as a global advocate for justice, but also brought the struggle for civil rights to the forefront of international consciousness. As we bask in the glow of recognition, celebrating the Nobel Peace Prize as a testament to the transformative power of nonviolence and the enduring legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. Through this chapter, we gain insight into the far-reaching implications of his work and the profound resonance of his message in the pursuit of a more just and equitable world. Chapter 12. Voting Rights Struggles. Amidst the accolades and recognition, the struggle for civil rights continued to surge forward, with the battle for voting rights taking center stage. This chapter delves into the arduous journey to secure voting rights for African Americans, a pivotal phase in the fight for equality. While the Civil Rights Act of 1964 marked a significant victory, the right to vote remained an elusive aspiration for many African Americans. Discriminatory practices such as literacy tests, poll taxes, and intimidation tactics were employed to disenfranchise minority communities, particularly in the South. Martin Luther King Jr. recognized that the ability to participate in the democratic process was a cornerstone of a just society. He joined forces with civil rights organizations, including the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC, to amplify the call for voting rights reform. The Selma to Montgomery marches of 1965 stand out as a defining moment in the voting rights struggle. These nonviolent protests, marked by courage and conviction, aim to draw attention to the barriers faced by African Americans attempting to exercise their right to vote. The brutal response from law enforcement on Bloody Sunday shocked the nation's conscience and galvanized support for voting rights reform. The marches led to the Voting Rights Act of 1965, a landmark piece of legislation that sought to eliminate discriminatory voting practices. This chapter unpacks the significance of the Voting Rights Act, examining its provisions and the sweeping changes it ushered in. Through the lens of Martin Luther King Jr. and his dedication to voting rights, we gain insight into the broader struggle for equality and justice. King's leadership in the face of adversity and his commitment to nonviolent resistance continued to shape the trajectory of the civil rights movement. We traverse the tumultuous terrain of voting rights struggles, where the fight for access to the ballot box became a rallying cry for justice. Through the perseverance of activists and the transformative power of legislation, we bear witness to the triumphs and challenges that paved the way for a more inclusive democracy. Chapter 13. Chicago Campaign and Urban Inequalities. The battle for civil rights extended far beyond the segregated South, and the fight against racial injustice found a new battleground in the urban landscapes of the North. This chapter delves into Martin Luther King Jr.'s Chicago campaign and the sobering realities of urban inequalities. By the late 1960s, King's vision had expanded to encompass the broader spectrum of social and economic injustice. He recognized that racial discrimination was not confined to the South, and that African Americans in northern cities faced their own set of challenges, including housing discrimination, unemployment, and unequal access to education and services. In 1966, King and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC, embarked on the Chicago Campaign, a series of nonviolent protests and demonstrations aimed at shedding light on the systemic inequalities that plagued the city. King's decision to shift his focus to the North reflected his commitment to addressing the full spectrum of racial injustice. The Chicago campaign sought to confront issues such as housing segregation and inadequate living conditions. King famously moved his family into an apartment in a Chicago slum, drawing attention to the deplorable housing conditions that many African American families endured. The campaign, however, encountered significant challenges. The entrenched nature of urban inequalities and the resistance of powerful interests posed formidable obstacles. King's efforts to effect change were met with resistance from both political and community leaders, highlighting the complexity of addressing systemic issues. This chapter explores the Chicago campaign as a microcosm of the broader struggle for civil rights and social justice. It examines the impact of King's activism in the urban context and the lessons learned from confronting northern inequalities. Through the lens of the Chicago campaign, we gain insight into the complexities of addressing deep-seated structural inequalities. We journey into the heart of Chicago, where the fight for civil rights took on a new dimension. Through the Chicago campaign, we witness the intersection of activism, urban dynamics, and the unwavering determination of Martin Luther King Jr. to confront injustices wherever they may reside. Chapter 14. Opposition and Controversies. In the midst of the civil rights movement's momentum, Martin Luther King Jr. faced not only immense challenges but also growing opposition and controversies. This chapter delves into the multifaceted landscape of resistance, highlighting the forces that sought to thwart progress and discredit King's message. As King's prominence grew, so did the backlash from those who vehemently opposed the civil rights movement. The use of nonviolent resistance and direct action tactics drew criticism and condemnation from various quarters. Some believed that King's approach was too radical, while others were entrenched in their commitment to maintaining the status quo. Political figures, including some within the federal government, viewed King's activism with suspicion. His advocacy for justice and equality often put him at odds with powerful interests, leading to surveillance and attempts to undermine his efforts. King's commitment to nonviolent resistance, however, remained unshaken in the face of adversity. Controversies also emerged within the civil rights movement itself. Differing ideologies and strategies sometimes led to internal divisions. Critics questioned the effectiveness of nonviolent resistance, arguing that it failed to bring about tangible change or address the deeper structural issues perpetuating inequality. The chapter delves into the multifaceted nature of opposition and controversy, shedding light on the complex dynamics that shaped the civil rights movement's trajectory. Through examination of these challenges, we gain a deeper understanding of the nuanced landscape within which King operated. We navigate the turbulent waters of opposition and controversies, exploring the ideological clashes and external forces that sought to hinder the progress of the civil rights movement. Through it all, Martin Luther King Jr.'s steadfast commitment to justice and equality remained unwavering, serving as a beacon of hope in the face of adversity. Chapter 15. Selma to Montgomery March. In the heart of Alabama, a path of courage and determination was forged as Martin Luther King Jr. and civil rights activists embarked on the historic Selma to Montgomery March. This chapter immerses us in the journey that became a defining moment in the fight for voting rights and equality. By the mid-1960s, Selma had emerged as a flashpoint in the battle for civil rights, particularly the right to vote. African Americans faced insurmountable barriers, including discriminatory voter registration practices. In response, activists led by King and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC, organized a series of marches to draw attention to this injustice. The first march, known as Bloody Sunday, was met with brutal violence by law enforcement as marchers were attacked while crossing the Edmund Pettus Bridge. The shocking images of the violence, captured by media, galvanized public opinion and propelled the nation's conscience to action. Undeterred by the violence, King and his fellow activists pressed on. The Selma to Montgomery March, a 54-mile journey, symbolized a march toward justice, dignity, and the right to vote. The final march, culminating in Montgomery, Alabama, saw an unprecedented turnout of supporters from across the nation. This chapter unravels the complexities of the Selma to Montgomery March, examining the strategic planning, the challenges faced, and the indomitable spirit that propelled the march forward. Through the sacrifices of activists, including the tragic loss of a young life, the marchers sent a resounding message that the struggle for civil rights could not be quelled. The Selma to Montgomery March culminated in a triumphant moment with the delivery of a petition for voting rights to the state's governor. This symbolic victory laid the groundwork for the subsequent passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, a monumental achievement in the fight for equal access to the ballot box. We walk alongside the courageous marchers, witnessing their determination to surmount the obstacles and overcome the barriers that had long suppressed African American voices. Through the Selma to Montgomery March, we gain insight into the power of collective action and the unwavering commitment of individuals who dared to dream of a future where all citizens could exercise their right to vote without fear or discrimination. Chapter 16. Civil Rights Act of 1968. The struggle for civil rights reached a pivotal moment in 1968 with the passage of the Civil Rights Act. This chapter explores the significance of this landmark legislation, which sought to address enduring inequalities and discrimination, particularly in the realm of housing. While previous civil rights legislation had made strides in combating segregation and discrimination, gaps remained, especially in housing practices. The Civil Rights Act of 1968, also known as the Fair Housing Act, aimed to rectify this by prohibiting housing discrimination based on race, color, religion, or national origin. The act marked a watershed moment in the fight for equal rights, as it sought to dismantle the deeply entrenched practices of housing segregation that perpetuated racial disparities. It was a testament to the perseverance of civil rights activists and their tireless efforts to eradicate discrimination in all its forms. The chapter delves into the legislative journey that led to the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1968, highlighting the role of Martin Luther King Jr. and other advocates in championing its cause. Through their determination and unwavering commitment, they succeeded in bringing issues of housing discrimination to the forefront of national consciousness. The Act's impact extended far beyond housing, resonating with the broader struggle for civil rights and social justice. By addressing the systemic barriers that marginalized communities faced in accessing housing opportunities, the Civil Rights Act of 1968 furthered the movement's goal of creating a more just and equitable society. We explore the profound implications of the Civil Rights Act of 1968, examining its role in dismantling discriminatory housing practices and its lasting legacy in the ongoing quest for equal rights and opportunities. Through this chapter, we bear witness to the power of legislation as a tool for transformation and a testament to the tireless efforts of those who fought for a more inclusive and just society. Chapter 17: Economic Justice and Poor People's Campaign. Amidst the strides made in the civil rights movement, Martin Luther King Jr. turned his attention to the urgent issue of economic inequality. This chapter delves into King's advocacy for economic justice and the launch of the Poor People's Campaign, a powerful movement that sought to address poverty and systemic injustice. Recognizing that civil rights extended beyond legal desegregation, King emphasized the importance of economic empowerment for marginalized communities. He believed that true equality could only be achieved by addressing the economic disparities that plagued society. In 1967, King embarked on a new phase of activism with the launch of the Poor People's Campaign. This movement aimed to unite individuals of all races and backgrounds in a common struggle against poverty and economic injustice. The campaign sought to shed light on the plight of the nation's poor and demand government action to address their needs. The chapter explores the planning and execution of the Poor People's Campaign, from the initial vision to the establishment of Resurrection City, a tent city erected on the National Mall to draw attention to the issues of poverty and inequality. Despite challenges and logistical obstacles, the campaign succeeded in bringing these critical issues to the forefront of national discourse. Tragically, the Poor People's Campaign would be King's final crusade before his untimely assassination in 1968. However, his legacy endured, and the movement's spirit of solidarity and demand for economic justice continued to inspire generations of activists. Through the lens of the Poor People's Campaign, we gain insight into King's evolving vision of a just and equitable society. We witness his unwavering commitment to addressing the root causes of poverty and his dedication to amplifying the voices of the marginalized. As we explore the profound impact of the Poor People's Campaign, a testament to Martin Luther King Jr.'s enduring legacy and his tireless pursuit of economic justice for all. Through this chapter, we bear witness to the transformative power of collective action and the indomitable spirit of a movement that dared to challenge systemic inequalities. Chapter 18: Legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. The legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. is a tapestry woven from the threads of courage, conviction, and a tireless commitment to justice. This chapter explores the enduring impact of King's life and work, backed by facts and data that illuminate the far-reaching influence of his efforts. First, civil rights legislation. Martin Luther King Jr.'s leadership played a pivotal role in the passage of significant civil rights legislation. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 were monumental achievements that dismantled institutionalized racism and expanded access to the democratic process. Second, desegregation of schools. King's activism contributed to the desegregation of schools across the United States. While progress was slow, his advocacy accelerated the dismantling of racial barriers in education, leading to greater opportunities for African American students. Third, Nobel Peace Prize. In 1964, King became the youngest person ever to receive the Nobel Peace Prize. This prestigious honor underscored the global recognition of his commitment to nonviolence and social change. Fourth, Poor People's Campaign. King's advocacy for economic justice culminated in the Poor People's Campaign, which highlighted the link between poverty and systemic inequalities. The campaign sparked a national conversation and paved the way for initiatives aimed at addressing economic disparities. Fifth, Changing Public Opinion. King's speeches, including his iconic "I Have a Dream" address, captured the imagination of millions and shifted public opinion. His message of equality and justice resonated with people across racial and social lines, inspiring collective action and societal change. Sixth, Influence on future movements. King's philosophy of nonviolent resistance inspired subsequent social justice movements, including the women's rights movement, LGBTQ+ rights movement, and environmental activism. His principles continue to guide activists seeking positive change. Seventh, Academic and cultural impact. King's legacy is embedded in academia and culture. His speeches, writings, and philosophy are studied in schools and universities worldwide. His life has been celebrated through literature, music, theater, and film, further cementing his place in history. Eighth, Martin Luther King Jr. Day. In 1986, Martin Luther King Jr. Day was established as a federal holiday in the United States, commemorating his birthday on January 15th. It is a day of reflection, service, and remembrance, underscoring King's enduring influence. Ninth, the fight against apartheid. King's advocacy for civil rights extended beyond U.S. borders. He opposed apartheid in South Africa, and his efforts contributed to raising awareness and international pressure against the oppressive regime. 10th, continuing struggles. While significant progress has been made, racial and economic inequalities persist. King's legacy serves as a reminder that the fight for justice is ongoing, motivating individuals and movements to work toward a more equitable society. Through this chapter, we delve into the indelible mark left by Martin Luther King Jr. His unwavering dedication to justice, equality, and nonviolent resistance continues to shape the world, inspiring generations to strive for a more inclusive and just future. Chapter 19. Impact on Modern Social Movements. Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy transcends time, resonating powerfully with modern social movements that continue to challenge inequality and advocate for justice. This chapter delves into the profound impact of King's principles and strategies on contemporary movements, showcasing the enduring relevance of his vision. First, Black Lives Matter movement. The Black Lives Matter (BLM) movement draws inspiration from King's legacy of nonviolent resistance. BLM advocates for an end to police brutality and systemic racism, echoing King's call for justice and equality. Second, intersectionality and inclusivity. King's emphasis on unity and inclusivity has influenced modern movements to address intersecting forms of oppression. Movements like feminism and LGBTQ+ rights recognize the importance of coalition building and solidarity across diverse communities. Third, nonviolent resistance. King's commitment to nonviolent resistance remains a guiding principle for modern activists. Movements like BLM, climate activism, and anti-war protests employ nonviolent strategies to raise awareness and effect change. Fourth, global human rights movements. King's advocacy for civil rights inspired international human rights movements. Activists around the world draw on his legacy to challenge authoritarian regimes, fight for democracy, and promote equality. Fifth, youth-led movements. Modern youth-led movements, such as those addressing gun violence and climate change, are inspired by King's belief in the power of young voices to drive social change and demand accountability. Sixth, voting rights advocacy. Efforts to protect and expand voting rights echo King's dedication to democratic participation. Movements combat voter suppression and advocate for accessible and fair elections. Seventh, economic justice initiatives. King's focus on economic justice resonates with contemporary movements advocating for fair wages, workers' rights, and wealth redistribution to address income inequality. Eighth, grassroots organizing. King's emphasis on grassroots organizing and community mobilization is a hallmark of modern movements seeking to create change from the ground up. Ninth, digital activism. Modern technology has transformed activism, allowing movements to reach a global audience. King's strategies of leveraging media and communication resonate in today's era of digital advocacy. 10th, continuing legacy. The enduring impact of King's legacy is evident in the ongoing struggle for justice. His teachings and principles continue to inform and inspire modern movements, proving that his vision of a more equitable world is as relevant as ever. Through this chapter, we explore how Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy reverberates in modern social movements. His unwavering commitment to justice, equality, and nonviolent resistance serves as a guiding light for those who seek to challenge injustice and create a more just and equitable society. Chapter 20. Events of Martin Luther King Jr.'s life in chronological approach. Martin Luther King Jr.'s life was a tapestry woven with countless events that shaped his journey and left an indelible mark on history. This chapter presents a chronological account of the key events that defined King's remarkable life, from his early years to his enduring legacy. 1. January 15, 1929, birth and early years. Martin Luther King Jr. is born in Atlanta, Georgia, to Reverend Martin Luther King Sr. and Alberta Williams King. 2. 1944, college and early activism. King enrolls at Morehouse College in Atlanta. He experiences racial segregation and becomes involved in civil rights activism. 3. 1955, Montgomery Bus Boycott. Rosa Parks' arrest sparks the Montgomery Bus Boycott. King emerges as a prominent leader, advocating for nonviolent protest. 4. 1957, formation of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC. King helps establish the SCLC to coordinate civil rights efforts. 5. 1960, Sit-ins and Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC. King supports sit-ins and the formation of SNCC, a student-led civil rights organization. 6. 1963, I Have a Dream and March on Washington. King delivers his iconic I Have a Dream speech during the March on Washington. 7. 1964, Nobel Peace Prize. King is awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for his commitment to nonviolent resistance. 8. 1965, Selma to Montgomery March and Voting Rights Act. The Selma to Montgomery March raises awareness about voting rights, leading to the Voting Rights Act of 1965. 9. 1966, Chicago Campaign and Fair Housing. King focuses on economic justice and launches the Chicago Campaign. He advocates for fair housing and addresses urban inequalities. 10. 1967, Poor People's Campaign. King initiates the Poor People's Campaign, advocating for economic justice and equity. 11. April 4, 1968, Assassination and Legacy. Martin Luther King Jr. is tragically assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee. His legacy endures, inspiring generations to continue the fight for justice. 12. 1986, Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Martin Luther King Jr. Day is established as a federal holiday, celebrating his contributions to civil rights. 13. Ongoing legacy, influence on modern movements. King's teachings and principles continue to influence modern social justice movements. This chapter presents a chronological overview of Martin Luther King Jr.'s life, from his birth to his enduring legacy. Through these pivotal events, we gain a comprehensive understanding of King's journey, his unwavering commitment to justice, and his lasting impact on the world. Chapter 21. His quotations from the Book of No about Martin Luther King Jr., A Significant Role in American History and the Civil Rights Movement, by Saurabh Singh Chauhan. Martin Luther King Jr.'s words were not just phrases, they were beacons of hope, wisdom, and inspiration that continue to resonate with people across generations. This chapter presents 21 of his most beautiful and profound quotations, each encapsulating a timeless message of justice, equality, and the power of change. Number 1. Darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. Number 2. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Number 3. Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. Number 4. The time is always right to do what is right. Number 5. Faith is taking the first step even when you don't see the whole staircase. Number 6. The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. Number 7. We must learn to live together as brothers or perish together as fools. Number 8. If you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward. Number 9. Life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? Number 10. In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. Number 11. The time is always ripe to do right. Number 12. Change does not roll in on the wheels of inevitability, but comes through continuous struggle. Number 13. We may have all come on different ships, but we're in the same boat now. Number 14. The function of education is to teach one to think intensively and to think critically. Intelligence plus character, that is the goal of true education. Number 15. I have decided to stick with love. Hate is too great a burden to bear. Number 16. We must accept finite disappointment, but never lose infinite hope. Number 17. Not everybody can be famous, but everybody can be great, because greatness is determined by service. Number 18. The art of acceptance is the art of making someone who has just done you a small favor wish that he might have done you a greater one. Number 19. The ultimate tragedy is not the oppression and cruelty by the bad people, but the silence over that by the good people. Number 20. Love is the only force capable of transforming an enemy into a friend. Number 21. Free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last. Through these quotations, we delve into the heart and soul of Martin Luther King Jr., witnessing his eloquence, wisdom, and unyielding commitment to justice. Each quote is a testament to his enduring legacy, and a reminder that his words continue to guide us on the path toward a more just and equitable world. Chapter 22. Summary of all chapters. Chapter 1, Introduction. The introduction sets the stage for our journey into the life and legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. We embark on a compelling exploration of his remarkable contributions to American history and the civil rights movement. As we delve into his life story, we encounter a man whose unwavering dedication to justice and equality transformed a nation. Chapter 2: Early Life and Education. This chapter takes us back to the beginnings of Martin Luther King Jr.'s life, from his birth in Atlanta to his formative years. We explore the influences that shaped his character, the early signs of his leadership, and his pursuit of education as a foundation for his future activism. Chapter 3: Segregation and Jim Crow Laws. In this chapter, we delve into the harsh realities of racial segregation and the oppressive Jim Crow laws that permeated the southern United States. We witness the seeds of resistance taking root as King's understanding of inequality deepens. Chapter 4: Education and Spiritual Influences. King's intellectual growth and spiritual journey come to the forefront in this chapter. We explore the pivotal role of education and the profound impact of his religious upbringing on his evolving perspective on justice and equality. Chapter 5: Nonviolent Philosophy and Gandhian Principles. The philosophy of nonviolent resistance takes center stage as we delve into King's studies of Mahatma Gandhi's principles. This chapter traces the development of his commitment to nonviolence as a powerful tool for social change. Chapter 6: Rise of Civil Rights Activism. King's emergence as a civil rights leader is highlighted in this chapter. We witness the early stirrings of activism that would eventually lead to his pivotal role in challenging racial injustice. Chapter 7: Montgomery Bus Boycott. We step into the heart of the civil rights movement as we examine the Montgomery Bus Boycott. King's leadership in this pivotal event marks a turning point in the struggle against segregation. Chapter 8: SCLC and Organized Protests. This chapter delves into the formation of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC, and its strategic approach to organized protests. We witness the birth of a cohesive movement and the power of collective action. Chapter 9: Letter from Birmingham Jail. King's eloquent letter from Birmingham Jail becomes a focal point in this chapter. We explore his impassioned response to criticism and his articulation of the moral imperative for direct action. Chapter 10: March on Washington and I Have a Dream. The historic March on Washington and King's iconic "I Have a Dream" speech come to life in this chapter. We witness the transformative impact of these events on the civil rights movement and American society. Chapter 11: Nobel Peace Prize and National Recognition. King's international recognition and the Nobel Peace Prize take center stage. We explore how these accolades elevated his cause and the broader implications for the civil rights movement. Chapter 12: Voting Rights Struggles. This chapter delves into the unrelenting battle for voting rights and the Selma to Montgomery March. We witness the tenacity of activists and the passage of pivotal legislation. Chapter 13: Chicago Campaign and Urban Inequalities. King's focus on economic justice and the Chicago Campaign is explored here. We delve into the complexities of addressing urban inequalities and the challenges faced in a new terrain. Chapter 14: Opposition and Controversies. The opposition and controversies that surrounded King's activism are examined in this chapter. We explore the diverse forces that sought to undermine progress and challenge his methods. Chapter 15: Selma to Montgomery March. The Selma to Montgomery March takes center stage as a defining moment in the fight for voting rights. This chapter immerses us in the courageous journey of activists demanding change. Chapter 16: Civil Rights Act of 1968. The passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1968, also known as the Fair Housing Act, becomes a milestone in this chapter. We examine the legislative journey and the Act's impact on dismantling housing discrimination. Chapter 17: Economic Justice and Poor People's Campaign. King's advocacy for economic justice and the launch of the Poor People's Campaign take center stage. We witness his dedication to addressing poverty and systemic inequalities. Chapter 18: Legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. In this chapter, we reflect on King's enduring legacy and his impact on civil rights, social justice, and the world. His words and actions continue to inspire change and guide modern movements. Chapter 19: Impact on Modern Social Movements. King's influence on modern social movements takes the spotlight. We explore how his principles and strategies continue to shape contemporary activism and promote equality. Chapter 20: All Events of His Life in Chronological Approach. A comprehensive chronology of Martin Luther King Jr.'s life unfolds in this chapter. We trace the key events that shaped his journey from birth to his lasting legacy. Chapter 21: His Quotations. This chapter presents a collection of 21 of Martin Luther King Jr.'s most beautiful and impactful quotations. Each quote encapsulates his wisdom, vision, and commitment to justice. Through these chapters, we embark on a rich and enlightening exploration of Martin Luther King Jr.'s life, philosophy, and enduring legacy. As we journey through his achievements and challenges, we gain a deeper understanding of his profound impact on American history and the world.